Hello and welcome to Tom Talk Shop. Today I'm going to go over the process we took of taking a $16 or $17 plane, it was something like that, from big box, and we turned it into something at least a little bit more usable and a little bit better looking. So the purpose of this plane, in our case, was Sukey wanted something that she could carry around very easily, one-handed like this, and her hand's a lot smaller than mine, fit in her pocket or fit in the tool bag, and she can use it for flattening off the tops of plugs when we're doing installs, and for cleaning up the ends of little pieces of wood when she's doing small trim work and that kind of thing. I personally don't have one of these and don't use them, but she thought this would be really handy for her. She's been using a chisel for that kind of work, and she thinks that this is just going to be a little bit handier for her, especially for the trim work where she can use a shooter for doing that, just a little tiny one that she can carry around with her so she doesn't have to go back to the workstation every time to make a cut. So if you like this content, please like, subscribe, and comment. Thank you, and let's get going. Okay, I've got the plane here, and it's fresh out of the box, and it's, well, not pristine, let's put it that way. Let's see if it'll even cut some wood. Oh, man. Wow. I've got it barely set to cut. I have to really work to push it. Okay, let's check. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is I want to check the right side of the plane for square. I'm going to have to file that off just a little bit because it'll be getting used that way. Okay, so it looks good except for where the pin is. I mean, it's close enough for government work. The sole is pretty flat enough, but it's horribly, horribly rough. I might clean the mouth up right there a little bit. The blade is just dull, and it's got a burr on both the top and the bottom, and I'm going to apply a very, very slight camber to this, not enough to knock it out of square, but just enough so that it'll cut a little bit easier and won't leave a mark on each side when she's doing things like taking the tops of plugs off, which is the primary purpose of this. And then lastly, I'm going to sand the whole sled down, and I'm going to paint it a brighter color, something about the color of this pencil, so that when we're working around a job site or something, she can find it, because this is not really a furniture maker's plane, it's really just carpentry plane. So with that, let's get started. Okay, I'm going to start with just giving this sole a quick once over with my 100 grit on a board. I use this for sharpening. Nothing special here. Better already. Now while I'm doing that, I'm also going to work the sides. Hold that there like that. I made a big difference already. I just did a little bit. Okay, I've decided I want to clean the mouth out just a tiny bit. It's mainly I just want to get that paint off there because it's distorting the way the blade sits on there. And this is the file I had that would fit, sort of. And then I've got a feather file for fine cleanup. So I'm just taking this file and I'm trying to get, and I'm limited a little bit by this thing here, this nut that sits here, this post. It's getting better. Now I'm going to use a very expensive feather file here for this, but probably sandpaper may end up answering even better. Let's just see here. Yeah, let's get some sandpaper in there. Okay, I've got the blade, and Sukey will put a picture up here showing you how poor this top edge is. I'm also going to just lightly flatten the back of this so it's a little bit smoother. Right now it has a burr, top and bottom, and very rough. I'm going to use this very coarse sandpaper with oil, which is 100 grit, I believe, and I'm going to try to get rid of most of this grinding marks, and then I'll take that off. And in the process of this, it should put a very slight camber on it the way I sharpen. We did a whole video on sharpening these. So if you want to go back and look at that, it have a lot more detail. I'm just going to work side by side, staying in the approximate angle. Man, I can feel the grit in that. And this is going to take a while. So I'm going to, holding it, just keeping my angle close. I'm going to keep working back and forth on this. And I'm going to say it'll be a good 5 to 7 minutes of that. So I'm going to cut, and we're ready to flip it over and work on the back side, and then take it to the next grit. We'll come back. Okay, I've got this thing fairly well shaped. I didn't bother with all that. That took 30-40 minutes. Sukey will show a picture of it on the square to kind of show you the shape. So what I've done is, this just is so slightly longer than the two edges. And the way you achieve that is mostly by just going back and forth like this. I did take a bastard file and take the two edges off here. Didn't show that. And then I polished this face here, and she'll show you the picture of that now. You can see there's still a little bit of grooving left right here, but the cutting edge is nice and smooth. After a couple of good heavy sharpenings, the rest of that will disappear, but my hand had enough for one day. So now I'm going to go on to a slightly lighter grit, and I'm just going to do the same thing. Just working back and forth the same pattern, holding it just freehand. You don't need to do this with a guide unless you want to square it back up. And you just are going to work until you have an even burr all the way across. We've made a couple of in-depth videos on sharpening, so I'm not going to go into the deep details. Just hit the back again. Make sure you get the burr turned back the other way. Whew. Doesn't want to turn back. There we go. I just felt it go. Now that's nice and smooth. Take the grease off. I'm going to go to an Arkansas stone, and I'm just going to rinse and repeat. Again, taking the burrs down until we're just going to get rid of the burrs. And then when we come back, I'm going to go over it with a stroke, and then we'll get on to the next steps. Okay, I've got this thing all honed as far as I'm going to go with the stone, which is, I went up to a medium Arkansas. Now I'm just going to take about 30 passes on the coarsest grit on this. And then I'll take about 10 on the other two. Now, all right, I've done my 30 on the coarse, and I'll just hit 10 or so on each of the other, and we'll give it the shave test. I doubt even with that it'll take hair off, but we'll see. Not a very good quality blade, but it still should cut wood. All right, that's 10-ish of that. We'll just get it with 10 of these, or 10-ish. Nope, it shaves. What do you know? So that extra step is worth it. Okay, well that's pretty cool. Got a picture of what the blade looks like all finished up. And next thing I'm going to do is mask the body to get it ready to finish. Okay, I'm going to clean up this whole thing before I mask and get all the cutting oil off of it, and also get this areas that I rough sanded so that the new paint will hopefully adhere well. Any solvent will do. Actually, brake cleaner would probably do real well, but I don't have any handy in here, and I don't want to smell it in the house. This is denatured alcohol, and it doesn't quite knock your nostrils off as much as automotive cleaner would. So let me just finish this up, and then we'll mask it, and then we'll get to see what it's going to sort of look like all red. Okay, I didn't film taping the mouth because, well, you didn't need to hear any of my explicatives. I'm just going to tape the bottom, the sole, and we decided to leave the sides natural as well. So what I'm going to do is just put this on here like this, and then take it off with an X-Acto. Okay, I've taken the masking off, and this thing's a whole lot more square than it was before. Okay, I've taken this guy. I did stroke the bottom of it just to make it smoother. Didn't show that part. It doesn't really affect the appearance, but it sure makes it feel better. And I'm going to put the blade in. When you set these up, try to do it in such a way that the blade's not cutting at all to start with. Get it in there as square as you can, but these are not a precision instrument. They're just a step up from a wood plane. Okay, let's get that there. Tighten that guy in. You want to get it really tight and then back it off just a little bit for your first test. Okay, so I'm not cutting at all, so I'm going to take my peening hammer in this case, but give it a couple taps, and okay, and it's actually cutting too much this way, so I'm going to tap the blade back just a little bit, and a little bit more actually. Very light taps, by the way. Okay, and now in the process of doing that, I've made the blade too shallow again. Tighten that up. Okay, now it's cutting good, but it's still not square. More adjustments. All right, now we're cutting nice and square, but it's a little bit aggressive for my taste. So in this case, I'd give it maybe 1 or 2 taps on the back. That just eases it up. Let's see how that does. It could actually take another couple. About 4 taps on the back probably makes 1 tap on the top. There we go. Getting a pretty paper thin shaving there. Nice and thin. Let's see if we can get a full width shaving out of it now. Well, I don't think I have it set deep enough to take a full width shaving it because it's got just enough camber on the blade. Just a little bit more there. There we go. There we go. All right, so that's probably the way I've got it set. That's about as thin of a shaving I can take full width. But there we have, that's a pretty good shaving. And you can see light through it. So for a $16 plane, that isn't too bad. And with that, we're going to call it a day.